The cool, crisp Denver air, carrying the faint scent of pine from the distant Rockies, was usually Evelyn Reed's favorite part of the day. Every morning, for 12 years, she'd made the 10-minute walk from the 16th Street Mall shuttle stop to the towering glass and steel edifice of Veridian Data Solutions, her professional home. Her routine was a comfort. A strong black coffee from the small cafe on the ground floor, a quick glance at the headlines on her phone, then a focused dive into the intricate web of Veridian's data infrastructure. As senior data architect, Evelyn was the silent backbone of the company, the one who understood every legacy system, every cloud migration, every custom-built algorithm that powered their multi-million-dollar operations. She designed most of them herself. Her apartment in the Highlands, with its exposed brick and a small, vibrant balcony garden, was her sanctuary. Evenings were spent tending to her succulents, reading complex sci-fi novels, or occasionally meeting her friend, Sarah, for dinner in Lohi. Evelyn wasn't flashy. Her life was built on quiet competence and the satisfaction of building things that worked seamlessly. She wore practical, well-tailored clothes, her dark hair often pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, her gaze direct and intelligent. She was the kind of person who could debug a system in her sleep, who understood the logic gates better than she understood small talk. This meticulous nature was precisely what made her so invaluable, and, as it turned out, so dangerous. The subtle shift in the corporate atmosphere had been gradual, almost imperceptible to others. But Evelyn, with her finely tuned sense for system anomalies, felt it keenly. Marcus Thorne, a man she'd dated briefly and unhappily years ago, had ascended the ranks with alarming speed. He was charismatic, all slick suits and disarming smiles, but Evelyn knew the cold, calculating ambition that lurked beneath. Their relationship had ended with a casual cruelty that still stung, a dismissive text after months of shared evenings. Now, as the new chief technology officer, Marcus's shadow loomed large over her department. He had an uncanny knack for taking credit for others' work, his presentations dazzling but often light on actual substance, relying instead on the foundational systems Evelyn and her team had painstakingly constructed. She'd seen the shift in his eyes, the way his smirk played on his lips whenever he caught her gaze in the hallway. A quiet, predatory satisfaction that he now held power over her. She'd tried to ignore it, focusing on her work, but the undercurrent of tension was undeniable. The call came on a Tuesday, late morning, disrupting her concentration on a critical data migration project. "Evelyn, Marcus wants to see you in his office." Now, it was his assistant, her voice unusually clipped. A knot formed in Evelyn's stomach. This wasn't a casual meeting. As she walked down the polished corridor, past the open-plan offices buzzing with the hum of keyboards, she felt the familiar dread mixed with a premonition. Marcus's office, with its panoramic views of the city stretching towards the distant peaks, felt like a cage. He was seated behind his sleek, minimalist desk, a picture of corporate power, his perfectly styled hair gleaming under the recessed lights. His gaze, when it finally met hers, was devoid of warmth. Another man from HR sat stiffly in a chair to the side. "Evelyn," Marcus began, his voice smooth, almost theatrical. "Thanks for coming, have a seat." She remained standing, her posture rigid. He gestured vaguely to a chair, but she ignored it. "We're undergoing a significant restructuring of the data architecture department, streamlining, optimizing for future growth." The words, often heard in corporate jargon, felt like nails on a chalkboard. "And in light of these changes, we've decided to move in a different direction. Your role, unfortunately, no longer aligns with our long-term vision." Evelyn felt a cold shock. "My role? I built half of these systems, Marcus. What different direction could possibly exclude 12 years of institutional knowledge and expertise?" Her voice, usually calm, trembled slightly. Marcus leaned back, a familiar smirk playing on his lips, precisely as the title suggested. It was a subtle curl, barely visible, but to Evelyn it screamed triumph. "Evelyn, your contributions have been noted. But sometimes a fresh perspective is necessary. We need someone who isn't so entrenched. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, a thinly veiled insult. Effective immediately, your employment with Veridian Data Solutions is terminated. The HR representative cleared his throat, pushing a severance package document across the desk. We'll need your company laptop, phone, and all access badges, Evelyn. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The injustice of it, the cold, calculated dismissal, the public humiliation implied by the escort. You're firing me after everything. It wasn't a question, but a statement of disbelief and hurt. It's business, Evelyn, Marcus said, his eyes hard, the smirk widening almost imperceptibly. Nothing personal, but it was personal. Oh, it was profoundly personal. He stood up, towering over her, his eyes glinting with a triumphant malice she knew all too well. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. The patronizing tone twisted the knife. She stared at him, unable to speak, her mind reeling. 12 years, gone just like that. She felt a burning sensation behind her eyes, a rush of blood to her head. The HR man moved to her side, his presence a physical manifestation of her abrupt expulsion. As she walked, numb, down the corridor towards her desk, a few colleagues looked up, their faces a mixture of confusion and pity. She kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, forcing back the tears, the heat of shame burning her cheeks. The security guard, a burly man named Dave she'd known for years, met her at her cube. His usually friendly face was grim. He wordlessly handed her a box. As she mechanically packed her framed photos, her favorite ergonomic keyboard, and a cherished coffee mug, her mind raced. How could this happen? How could she be so easily discarded? The weight of the injustice settled deep in her chest, heavy and suffocating. She surrendered her laptop, her phone, her badge. As Dave escorted her to the elevator, she looked back one last time at the office, the place that had been her world, now a fading memory. The doors closed, sealing her out. The descent in the elevator felt like a freefall. Stepping out into the Denver sunshine, the vibrant energy of the city seemed mocking. The cool air she usually cherished now felt biting, sharp. She walked aimlessly for a few blocks, the cardboard box heavy in her arms, her vision blurred by unshed tears. The familiar landmarks, Union Station, the bustling sidewalks, the historic buildings, all seemed alien. She felt exposed, adrift, like a system pulled offline without warning. The humiliation was a raw wound, searing her from the inside out. He had wanted to hurt her, to make her feel small and inconsequential, and he had succeeded. She eventually found herself back at her apartment, the silence amplifying the ringing in her ears. The box of personal effects sat accusingly on her kitchen counter. She dropped onto her sofa, staring blankly at the distant mountains visible from her window, their stoic presence a stark contrast to the chaos within her. The tears finally came, hot and furious, a torrent of grief, anger, and betrayal. She cried until her throat was raw, until her eyes were swollen and her head throbbed. She felt adrift, her carefully constructed life shattered. What now? All her professional identity, her purpose, had been stripped away. She scrolled through her phone contacts, contemplating calling Sarah, but the words wouldn't form. Shame kept her isolated. She felt utterly alone, worthless. Hours passed. The sun began to dip, painting the sky in fiery hues, but Evelyn saw nothing but the bleak landscape of her future. Then, amidst the wreckage of her emotions, a flicker. A memory, a system. Not the main corporate network. Not the standard employee logins that Marcus had undoubtedly revoked with a flourish, but something far deeper, far older. An emergency, system-level administrative account she had created herself, years ago, when Veridian was a smaller, leaner operation. It was a backdoor, a fail-safe, designed for disaster recovery, an entry point so fundamental and so obscure that it had been forgotten by everyone except its creator. It bypassed standard authentication protocols, burrowed deep beneath the firewalls, offering unfettered access to Veridian's most sensitive core data, its archives, its server logs, its deepest system configurations. Marcus wouldn't even know it existed, let alone have it on his revocation checklist. He forgot I still had the access codes. The thought wasn't a sudden burst of vindictive rage, but a slow, creeping realization, cold and precise. It was a data point, an anomaly, a forgotten vulnerability in the system. And she, Evelyn Reed, was the only one who held the key. The tears stopped. A different kind of energy, cold and analytical, began to flow through her veins. The shame receded, replaced by a quiet, simmering resolve. She didn't want her job back. She wanted justice. She wanted Marcus Thorne to pay. Not with violence, not with anything illegal that would taint her own integrity, but with the ruthless precision of someone who understood the architecture of his rise and, more importantly, its hidden weaknesses. She would dismantle his carefully constructed empire piece by piece, using the very tools he believed he had wrested from her. The first step was to recalibrate. Evelyn spent the next few days in a self-imposed exile, not out of despair, but out of strategic necessity. She cleaned her apartment, organized her digital files, and took long, solitary walks along the South Platte River, her mind a supercomputer processing terabytes of information. She reviewed Marcus's career trajectory, his rapid promotions, the sudden influx of venture capital, the unusually high-performing stock options linked to certain projects. She cross-referenced company announcements with market fluctuations, looking for patterns, anomalies, anything that felt off. Her technical mind, unburdened by daily tasks, worked with terrifying efficiency. Her advantage wasn't just the access codes. It was her intimate knowledge of Veridian's entire digital ecosystem. She knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking, in the server archives. She knew which systems were patched together with older protocols, which databases held sensitive, unencrypted information, and exactly how the data flows were designed. She understood that Marcus, for all his swagger, was a surface-level operator. He understood strategy and presentation, but not the deep-level mechanics. He delegated the true engineering to people like her. Her plan began to solidify. She wouldn't simply crash a system or delete files. That was amateur hour and easily traceable. Her revenge would be surgical, exposing Marcus's malfeasance without ever directly incriminating herself. She needed evidence, irrefutable proof of his ethical and potentially legal breaches. She suspected insider trading, perhaps manipulation of client performance metrics to secure lucrative contracts, or even skimming profits through shell corporations. One late night, with the city lights twinkling below, Evelyn finally activated her forgotten access. She set up a secure, untraceable VPN, cycling through multiple layers of encryption, masking her IP address meticulously. The old, familiar command line interface flickered to life, a ghostly echo of her past. She bypassed the new user authentication, slipping through the digital backdoor she had engineered years ago, a digital ghost in the machine. She moved through Veridian's networks like a phantom, leaving no trace, no digital footprint that could be linked back to her. She started with Marcus's internal communications, not just his email, but archived chats, project management notes, and shared drive access logs. She discovered a pattern of highly specific stock trades made through a brokerage account under his wife's maiden name, often preceding major company announcements or contract wins. The timing was too perfect, the profits too substantial to be mere coincidence. Then, she delved into client reports. She found discrepancies in data analytics presentations given to major clients, showcasing inflated performance metrics for projects directly overseen by Marcus. Raw data, hidden in an older, rarely accessed archive database, told a different story, one of underperformance and overbilling, carefully masked by selective reporting. The most damning discovery came from the internal financial audit logs. Marcus had established a series of shell companies, ostensibly for consulting and vendor services. Evelyn, using her deep understanding of Veridian's legacy accounting systems, cross-referenced these with actual work orders and found a shocking lack of deliverable products or services. These shell companies were conduits for siphoning off company funds, cleverly disguised as legitimate business expenses. It was embezzlement, pure and simple, facilitated by his position and the trust placed in him. Each piece of evidence was meticulously cataloged, time-stamped, and secured on an encrypted external drive, backed up multiple times. She built a case file, an unassailable dossier of his crimes, compiling it with the precision of a seasoned investigator. She spent weeks, sometimes working through the night, fueled by black coffee and a quiet, burning fire. She felt no joy, only a grim satisfaction in the meticulous gathering of truth. The culmination of Evelyn's plan was not a dramatic confrontation, but a precise, almost imperceptible shift in the digital landscape of Veridian Data Solutions. She didn't want to destroy the company, nor did she want to be implicated. Her target was Marcus, and her weapon was undeniable truth. She created an anonymous email account, routing it through layers of proxies that would make it virtually untraceable. Her recipient list was carefully curated, not just the HR department that had witnessed her humiliation, but key figures in corporate governance, Veridian's legal counsel, a senior partner in a major investment firm that had recently poured millions into Veridian, and a well-respected investigative journalist known for exposing corporate corruption at the Denver Post. The email contained a summary of her findings, meticulously detailed, with links to the critical, irrefutable evidence she had painstakingly collected. She embedded paths to the specific audit logs, the manipulated client reports, the shell company transactions, and the insider trading records, all accessible through Veridian's own internal systems, provided someone knew exactly where to look and had the right, albeit legitimate, access. She included a single, chilling sentence: "The truth is often hidden in plain sight for those brave enough to see past the polished facade." Then she hit send. The act was devoid of emotion, a cold, calculated execution of a data transfer. She then methodically scrubbed her digital footprints, deleting the temporary accounts, wiping the hard drive clean, leaving no trace of her intrusion. The ripple effect was almost immediate. Within days, the whispers started. An anonymous leak, internal investigations. The Denver Post published a front-page exposé hinting at significant financial irregularities at a prominent local tech firm, without naming Veridian directly, but the details were too specific for those in the know to miss. The investment firm that received her anonymous email initiated an immediate, aggressive internal audit. Evelyn watched from a distance, observing the digital tremors spreading through the corporate world. Marcus Thorne's carefully constructed empire began to crumble. The stock market reacted with a nervous dip. Internal investigations at Veridian quickly escalated. The trail Evelyn had laid was too clear, too well documented to ignore. The initial focus was on the anonymous whistleblower, but Evelyn's digital ghost had vanished without a trace. Eventually, the evidence pointed directly to Marcus. His shell companies were exposed. The manipulated client reports led to furious calls from major partners. The insider trading, though harder to prove definitively, created a cloud of suspicion that would never dissipate. The final blow came swiftly. The SEC launched an official investigation. The board of directors, desperate to protect the company's reputation and stock value, initiated an emergency meeting. Marcus Thorne, once the golden boy, was summarily fired, his carefully crafted career collapsing like a house of cards. The news hit local media with a splash, Veridian issuing a terse statement about unethical conduct by a former executive and promising full cooperation with authorities. There were no smirks this time, only grim-faced executives and the rapid descent of a once promising career into public disgrace and legal entanglement. Evelyn watched the news reports from her living room, a quiet satisfaction settling over her. She felt no joy, no giddy elation, just a profound sense of equilibrium restored. The injustice had been rectified, the scales balanced. She hadn't sought revenge for her job, but for the principle of it, for the dignity he had stripped away. She closed her laptop, the glow illuminating her face. The experience had forged something new within her. She was no longer just a data architect. She was a strategist, a digital warrior who understood the power of information and the vulnerability of those who misused it. She didn't return to corporate life. Instead, a few months later, Evelyn Reed launched her own boutique consultancy, specializing in cybersecurity audits and data integrity for small to mid-sized businesses. Her services were in high demand. She worked from a small, sunlit office in a renovated building downtown, overlooking the very city where her old life had ended and her new one had quietly, powerfully begun. The access codes, those forgotten keys to a world she no longer inhabited, remained dormant, a powerful reminder of what she had endured and what she had overcome. The Denver air still felt crisp, but now it carried a different scent. The quiet perfume of freedom and the sweet, lingering aroma of justice.